I am very honored today to have Kris Fugate, president of Revolution Machine Works in Cleveland, Ohio. Welcome to the show, Kris.
Yeah, thanks for having me. No, I appreciate it.
I've known Kris a long time, sort of crossed paths in the used machine tool business, and a long time ago, his family's business in the production business. Um, Today, we are talking Hydromats. We've talked about Hydromats a few times. Kris is right in the heart of this industry. He is somebody who really knows his stuff about Hydromats and rotary transfer machines. Before we go any further, I just want you to give a brief summary of what a revolution does, and then we'll skip around a little bit. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So Revolution Machine Works provides rotary transfer machine solutions for companies who are looking to either get into rotary transfer machines, or if they are just looking for ways to make their current machining processes better or faster, or if they're trying to bring it in-house and they don't know where to start or don't know where to go. We provide different levels of technology and price point for different rotary transfers, from used to rebuilt to brand new Italian made DM2 rotary transfers. So we are
mainly Hydromats.
Mainly Hydromats, yeah.
But you say rotary transfer machines because you also distribute a different rotary transfer machine. So just give a little brief summary of the DM2. Give me the two sentence summary.
Yeah, so DM2 is a rotary transfer manufacturer out of Brescia, Italy. They manufacture ball screw, fan controlled rotary transfers that are, in many,
and they're CNC.
They're all CNC. All CNC, no hydraulics. They got a lot of good features that traditional ones rotary transfers don't have, like rotating collets, 4 or 5 axis chucks. They're very, you can go as large as 6 inches on some of these rotary transfers.
6 inches in diameter.
Oh yeah, we can build it. I mean, the machine's going to be gigantic, but yes, the capacities are large. So they're a middle-sized company that we are the United States factory for, and we're trying to build the brand here in the United States and introduce people to the new technology.
And you even will take a DM2 unit and put it on a Hydromat, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so within the Hydromat market, traditionally, it started out as all hydraulic controlled machines, and what that means is all the units, the drilling units and things, their actuation is with hydraulics, no CNC. And then Hydromat came out with hydraulic servo proportion valve controlled CNCs. So not ball screws, but traditional, not like traditional CNCs, but it's hydraulic controlled. And then one of the common things on a Hydromat is you have 12 stations. You may have 11 that are just hydraulic.
I'm going to totally interrupt you. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, you're fine.
Okay. I want you to back up. So we're going to go into the nuances of the Hydromats in a bit, but because we've been getting into some of the technical stuff, I just want to get to that now. For people that don't know what a Hydromat is, there's a lot of people listening to this. Maybe they've heard of a Hydromat. They might not have even seen one. Give us the 10-year-old explanation of what a Hydromat is, because you were telling me the other day and I thought you did an awesome, interesting explanation. So
okay,
then we can later we'll talk about the hydraulic versus CNC and all that wonderful stuff, but I want people to know what the heck these machines are before we go any further.
Yeah, no problem. So a Hydromat is like we've been saying, a rotary transfer machine. And what that means is it's configured in a rotary dial. It holds the part. So it would hold a steel part like this, and the tools are rotating. Whereas on a screw machine, the bar rotates and the tools are stationary. And each station is like its own little CNC lathe or CNC mill. Okay, or not, mill or lathe. So you can do turning in a station, you can do milling, you can do threading. So
Right.
so you might have you have a round.
So it's
rotary
like
dial.
a machining center where it's
Right.
just standing still, the part.
Right. So it goes through, it machines it, and then it transfers it to the next station. So that's why it's called a rotary transfer, because it's in a rotary dial and it transfers the part from station to station.
That's
Okay.
an excellent explanation.
And what makes a Hydromat unique, there's a few things, is that you can take the part, machine the front side, you can come in with an inverting unit, pick it off, rotate it, stick it back in the collet, and machine the entire backside. And so for double-ended fittings like this, or any other kind of parts that need front and back work, this is the best type of machine to use. Now, traditionally, when rotary transfer machines were first built, early, all of them, and even in Italy today, they're very popular as the trunnion style, okay? Where it holds the part in the middle and it never lets it go. And you machine from this side and this side, and it transfers it.
The trunnion style, my understanding was always, it means it's rather than up and down, and the units are horizontal, things are vertical. It's a vertical. It's
It looks like a Ferris wheel.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. It's like a Ferris wheel. That's the definition of a trunnion versus a typical one.
Yes.
A typical Hydromat.
Correct. And so those machines are the most common in Europe still. And they came out, what Hydromat did is they came out with a machine that they call an open top. So you can easily access all of the tooling, the units. What makes a Hydromat great is a few things.
So it's unlike the trunnion. This is like more like a merry-go-round.
Correct, or like a merry-go-round. But you have full visibility and it's easy to work on. The trunnion is very tough to change tools, and it has its challenges. So a few things that make, if you want me to get into this, that make the Hydromat great, like we discussed the other day.
Yeah,
there's some basic principles about this machine. The first thing is that it's modular, and what that means is that you can easily change the machine over. Early and traditional rotary transfers are built around the part, and you know what I mean? These were built so you could run many parts. And so and easily change over from part to part, and they're modular. But what that means, you can take a unit off one station and put it in the other and swap them out, move them around, no problem, right? So what that did is that opened up.
So for people that need to visualize, explain like what a unit is. So you got the carousel, and then
so you have the round dial, and around it are drilling units or turning units. So you have 12 stations that you can put different tools in. You can put a station that does threading, or you could put a station in that does drilling, or you could put a station in that does turning.
And they move in and out. And then if it's CNC, it can go all kinds of ways.
Right. It can do profiling. It can do threading. It can do milling, like it could mill this hex if you wanted to. It could do milling flats. So, and then you can also mount units from the top too. So you can do cross holes, cross reaming, very versatile. And the machines were originally designed to eliminate second operations. So when guys who got into these Hydromats in the 80s and 90s absolutely crushed it, because they got the same piece price they would if they were running through 3 machines, but they were coming off complete. So what the machine, being able to move the units around on the machine, what it really did was suit the United States market, because it opens up a lot of the job shop guys who, they don't want to buy a machine for just one part. They want to run 500,000 on it. They want to switch over. They want to, run another part. And there's a lot more of those guys out there than there are large, big OEMs. So that really, I think, helped with the popularity of the machine. Another thing that makes the machine great.
So what you're saying is that a Hydromat is easy to change over jobs.
Absolutely.
Depends how much
be.
you're changing over.
Right. If you're running 500 pieces and changing over, it doesn't make any sense. But if you're running 50,000, changing over 100,000, 200,000, it makes a lot of sense if they're similar. But the key is to engineer those changeovers so you move as little of units as possible. That's how you get quick changeovers. If you totally strip down the machine and redo it, it's never going to be quick.
Right.
So
that's why that somebody would come to you guys, because they have a big job to retool. Okay. So, here's where some little more education will come in. All right. So people,
so another thing that's great about it is the Hearth ring coupling on a Hydromat in the indexing accuracy. And basically what that means is that, like on a screw machine, like an Acme or Davenport, the repeatability of the index.
Now there are some screw machines that do have the Hearth type coupling. The modern ones.
All the modern ones do, like all the newer ones. But the traditional US old school screw machines do not. They have double pin locking and different mechanisms. And what that means is that when you go to drill a hole, let's say, you want this, when that thing indexes, each station indexes in front of that drill, you want it as close to center as possible. The closer you are to center, the more it's going to cut accurate the size of the drill. If you're off center, it's going to cut that oversize. So the Hydromat repeats very well from part to part in front of each tool. And so that has made it so you can hold very tight tolerances. And so, you can also center each feature individually or to another feature. So you're able to hold very tight tolerances. And then there's a bunch of features, but the last major feature is that you can, on a screw machine, like a Acme or a Davenport, and again, like we mentioned, the modern ones are not like this. They're independent. You have independent on the old school stuff. All the spindles on each station rotated the same speed, and the end slide fed at the same feed. And so you're a slave to your slowest, your slowest RPM you can run. The Hydromat has individual feed and individual spindle speed, so you can maximize your tooling conditions in each station. And that means your cycle times are faster, your tool lives are longer, and everything's just a better process overall. So awesome. Those are the three big things that made the machine very popular, and
that's a great explanation. So, all right. So people have a little bit of an idea now, if people didn't before. All right. So somebody gets a part and they're trying to decide if it's a Swiss part, if it's a CNC lathe part, if it's a multi-spindle part. And there are arguments often for different machines.
Absolutely.
It depends on expertise. It depends on often on volume, material maybe. So let's, tell me a specific part, definitely Hydromat rather than the others, and then maybe something where kind of going back and forth, like it's that toss up.
All right. So this part is definitely a Hydromat part.
All right, explain it to the people of the world.
Okay. So basically with a screw machine, you can only really work one side effectively. Okay. Like I said, you have limited back working stations available. This part has all these grooves. It has cross hole, has a thread. It has work down on the inside, and then it has broaches and threads down in here, and then it has outside threads. So to complete
what diameter is that part?
It's 13/16. It's almost an inch. It's about 1 inch.
Okay.
And it's very long. So this part here, on a screw machine, you traditionally only have 8 stations max. You can do some things like form tooling and things like that, but you're not going to be able to complete all of these ops within a screw machine. But with a rotary transfer, you have
What about a
16.
spindle stopper? Could you do it with a spindle stopper?
No, because you still don't have enough back working stations to do the backside of the part. You only have enough to really do everything from the front. So for this part,
What about
you
a
have
Swiss
to.
machine? Could you do it with a Swiss machine?
Now you could do it with a Swiss machine, but a Swiss machine for this part would be about 2 minutes or a minute. On a Hydromat, it runs in 20 seconds.
2 minutes to
So
20 seconds. Incredible.
yeah. So, but the difference is if you're running 500 of these or 1,000 or even just 50,000, you want to put this on a Swiss machine. But if you're running 1,000,000, you definitely want to put it on a transfer machine.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the argument between the Swiss and this part would come into is what's the volume.
And what kind of cycle time you think it would be if you say ran it on a twin spindle, twin turret, CNC 5-axis lathe? You're talking even longer than 2 minutes?
Yeah, 2 minutes, minute and a half, 2 minutes. I mean, it would be a long
Right.
part. I mean, there's a lot of work here. You know what I mean? And this thing was absolutely maxed out on the transfer machine. So it would be hard for me to think it would be much faster than that. You know what I mean?
What about length of a part? If a Hydromat is a trunnion, it can do a lot longer parts, but if it was a sort of your typical horizontal Hydromat, can it run? How long can a part be?
So typically on saying, we don't like to go like, I've got parts that we've set up that are 8 inches long on a horizontal. You have to make modifications and put spacer flanges in and things when you get any longer than that. And plus your parts hanging way out. So you have to put a lot of supports under it and everything. So it's complex to do that. So to run longer parts on the horizontal isn't great. To a trunnion, you have the ability, say if this part's 12 inches long, you have the ability to put a chuck almost all the way down the length of the part if you need to support it. And you can run up to 12 and a half inches on a trunnion without modification. So, it's great for shafts and things like that just have end work, or has like a slot in the middle. The HS machine is a machine that holds the part from the bottom like this, and the chuck rotates like this. So that's also a good, you can run some longer parts on it.
And often that machine would be using blanks already, like hot forged parts or cold forged parts. Put it on with a robot or a loading mechanism.
Yes, and that's becoming more and more common today. Is actually a lot of people are making parts. They're near net shape blanking parts.
So
and
like 30 years ago, somebody might have taken an Acme or a Wickman and put a mechanism to use that as a chucker, right?
Right. So they would have ran it off the bar machine and blanked it. Then they would take it and put it into a chucker and secondary it. And then a lot of times they may put it into a drill machine after that and drill it. And then, the transfer machine comes along and makes it all in one crack. So it's like it's just a much better process.
Yeah.
Now, I will say, like you said, the borderline parts. Okay. I tell people all the time, there are parts that are just way better screw machine parts, and those parts are just, they're obviously more easy to run, as far as feature wise. But the screw machines can make some complex things. Like this part here would be a borderline. Do we put it on the Hydromat or do we put it on the screw machine? Because you see here, this has no back working. It's just a cutoff. So you can, this part runs on screw machine. It runs on Acme Gridley. But the customer had a family of parts that was similar. So we ended up putting this on the Hydromat. This here, a shop probably would just lean toward what their expertise is. They would say, yeah, we could put it on the Hydromat, but we've got 30 Acmes out here, and they would just put it on an Acme. You know what I mean? Now, if this part's out of steel, I don't know. Maybe it's you could probably run it faster on the Hydromat because you have individual speeds and fees, and you can profile this. And
how difficult is it to learn to run a Hydromat? First, a legacy Hydromat, and then a CNC Hydromat?
To be honest, it's a 6 month to a year learning curve to really understand what you're doing, and you got to have somebody to call. And that's what I tell people. When I first started, I had guys I called every single day. I mean, I drove them nuts, but I tell people, you call me or call our text, text us every day, all day, because I had to have somebody to call. I mean, it's tough to know whether the problem is just a normal problem that you have during the operation, or if it's like an actual machine problem. And it takes a while just to go through it and experience it. And then, 6 months later, the things that were hanging you up for hours before, it's like no big deal. You know what I mean? So
Sure.
it takes a while. There's a lot to learn. And what really blows people's minds, they look at this thing, it looks like a UFO. You know what I mean? And so what we tell people is, just break it down. Each station it's producing its own part. So if you make that station to print for that station all the way around, it becomes a puzzle. It just adds a hole, then it adds a thread. And so if you focus on just what is the station supposed to be doing, how much is supposed to be taking off, how's the tooling supposed to be set, and it's all correct, and you do that for every one, then together it all works. And so it kind of slows it down for people. And we usually draw out each station with the tool setting. And what the part's supposed to look like, so they can measure it in each station and make sure it's right. And that's the only way you can put this whole puzzle together a lot of times, for people who don't know, how to do it. Now, once you've been in it a year or two, then you start looking at it and going, well, we can move that over here and move that over here and it'd be better. And then you really know you're understanding what's going on.
So that brings me a little bit. You've got an interesting story how you got into this racket.
Yeah, some days I wonder, right?
Yeah, tell me about it.
Yeah, you mean you're in the same boat, really?
Well, sorta. There's similarities.
Yeah.
The first time I met Kris, he came to Graf Pinkert because Graf Pinkert had sold his family business, a Wickman multi-spindle.
Right.
So just give us the 3-minute bio of how you came up into this industry and then got up to where you are now.
Okay, so my dad, Dan Fugate, owned a screw machine shop called DNS Machine Products, and it was located in Aurora, Indiana, where I'm from, in Lawrenceburg, Indiana is where I'm from, which is right by Cincinnati. And so I was born into the business, essentially. I remember going there, very young, 2 years old, 3 years old, just getting dirty, messing around, and so, you grow up around the business, and our shop had 30 Acmes, 30 Davenports, and 15 Hydromats at the end. And we were primarily automotive. So basically, I went to college, and then I got out of college, and the plan was for my sister and I to run the business. And we, so my dad started me off running Hydromats and Davenports. And it was a big learning experience.
You hadn't run the machines when you were younger.
And I didn't like it. I mean, it wasn't great, but I'm thankful every day. I grew to like it, but at first it's not really what I wanted to do, but I'm thankful every day that I did it. And then after that, I got to kind of know the machines a little bit. I'm not an expert by any means.
So Davenports and Hydromats, not you didn't do Acmes or Wickmans or
I mean,
you had two Wickmans, but
right.
You just you stuck to
the
those.
Acmes were there, and eventually I moved into an engineering role where I did do engineering and tool design and things for the Acmes, but I never ran the Acmes. I just was around them a lot, problem solve, troubleshoot. But at that time, my experience wasn't great. I mean, these guys who were working there knew way more than I did. You know what I mean? I learned from them. I learned from, trying stuff and not working. I learned from wrecking stuff. And you know what I mean? I mean, it's just how you learn. But the biggest influence on my career was my dad. He sat me down, and I remember for a year period, he literally taught me everything he knew about machining, tooling, tool design, speeds and feeds. I would bring in these layouts and he would just red line them up and say, try again. And I'd get mad. But that whole process took forever, right? In my mind. But that I use those principles that I learned at that shop every single day for just whatever. Amy, you can endlessly think about the references. So, what happened is 2008 hit, we went from, 60 employees down to about 8. And then we built back up to about 40 in 2012. And he got an offer to sell the business. And it was just, we were just kind of all worn out. You know what I mean? We were done with the automotive roller coaster. And of course, that was pretty traumatic what happened.
Did you sort of have a choice, like, to carry the business on, or to do something else?
Yeah, we did, and it just was a good situation for all to move forward. The risk and you go through that downturn, and it just changes the way you think about everything. Because it could just, like, for all these shops and all these guys out here, it could just end any time. I mean, the customer pulls the work, you're done. And that's just not a world I think we just didn't want to live in it anymore. So,
because it's interesting, from my standpoint, like, the grass is always greener. I look at some of these customers and they just have these long running jobs, and just seems like they're coining money, like, I know that there's risk in it, but I don't know. It seems like, I mean, you've experienced both, being in the selling the equipment. What do you think is, I mean, look, what you do is different than what we do.
Right.
But yeah, at Graf Pinkert in our used business, but at the same time, selling the tools to people versus making the parts, what what is a better business model? And it may have to come down to more than just a business model. It may just come down to, like, lifestyle or how you like running a company.
Well, I think that I have thought about this a lot, and I am, when I first got out of production business, I was so happy. I was like, man, this is great, because there's always that impending doom of shutting the line down. There's always, nothing can stop. You can never stop. Like, you can never have these issues, or the machine can never be down. And if
but
it
is that an automotive thing more than anything, or you think that's pretty much for everybody?
I think that companies stop carrying inventory and doing the just-in-time thing, and of course they have safety stocks or whatnot. But I think it's everywhere now. Everyone runs their not everyone, but
I mean, it might have changed a little bit now with COVID. They may have different philosophies.
Maybe now, maybe now it's better. So I guess here's the deal. Like, what I think is that production it never stops, and like it can always, like, if you can keep your business balanced amongst different industries and different customers, and you never let a customer, quote unquote, own you by having all of your business, I think production is a wonderful business. Mm-hmm. We were a lot of automotive, and these guys come in and they say, this is what you're going to do, and if you don't, you're going to lose 15 jobs. And so you start doing crazy stuff, and so it's bad. Now, machine building is a better pace, but it also,
machine buildings, that's damn hard too. That's why
machine building has its own challenges. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, you have some similarities with Graf Pinkert.
Right.
Graf Pinkert does refurbish Wickmans to some extent. I mean, nothing like what you guys would do with a Hydromat. Turnkeying jobs. I mean, once in a while we'll turnkey jobs for a customer, but it's definitely not something we relish. Better, it better be a good incentive to do it.
Right.
People. I hope nobody's getting annoyed that I'm saying this right now, but So, okay, this story is great. So let's just go a little further. So, all right, you get out of
Yep, get out, and some of the first jobs I had was people who we sold equipment to, or we had some equipment left
Did
over
you
that we
have a
needed to
game
liquidate.
plan right away? You're like, I'm out of this, and now I'm going to be on the other side, servicing, selling, etc.
Yeah, and it worked. It was about just like that, detailed and official. I just said, "Yeah, I'm going to start rebuild. I'm going to start working on Hydromats." And I remember I had gotten somebody to let me rebuild a 36100 unit, and I was off and running. I even remember I was back in the corner of DNS. I had a little workshop set up and was doing it, before, we knew the price was selling, but before it was all closed, I was
Had you
working on
rebuilt a
stuff.
unit before?
Yeah, so we had done stuff like that in the shop, and so I was doing it, and I was also getting help from some of the guys, obviously, who were working there. So it was just kind of one of those things where it seemed like I knew that there was a need for another option on these machines, just for many reasons, and that people could.
For everybody who doesn't know, Hydromat units, even used, they can go from $5,000 to, back in the day, to 30 grand,
Right.
the best of the best recess units. So when it's amazing when you think one unit is like the price of a cheap used machine. So that's why there would be demand for somebody rebuilding their
Right.
unit.
Right. And I mean, the OEM did a great job at servicing, but you can't service the entire. I mean, nobody. We can't service
OEM
everyone.
meaning Hydromat.
Hydromat. Yeah, Hydromat. Yeah, like you can't. Nobody can service all of these customers. You know what I mean? I mean, once you get a brand so big, and actually one of the biggest challenges when I first started was actually finding used Hydromat equipment. I don't know if you remember that, but it was like scarce. When you found it, you bought it. Because
what years are you talking?
I was talking like when we first started with Hydromats in '99 up until about, I'd say 2013, 2012, it was very challenging to find used Hydromat things on the used market. And so
probably not in 2008. There's probably plenty
no, that's
used
when
stuff.
it really started booming. There was a ton of stuff available then.
You couldn't get rid of it.
Right. But before that, your choice was pay 30 grand at Hydromat or nothing, so if you found a unit even for 25 or 20, guys bought it because it was not out there. Now there's just been, I can't point to why, but there's used stuff all over now, you know what I mean? So that was one of the things that was a challenge for us.
So you were rebuilding the units,
Yeah,
kind of doing your own thing. Okay, then what happened?
So I brought a company in.
You've got an interesting journey. So I want to know about it.
It's been a ride. So I brought a company in to look at some of the equipment we had left over, and they said, we'll buy it, but if you come out and show me how to use
a production
shop. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If you set it, can you tool it up for us? Can you set it up? Can you show us how to run it? I was like, this is great.
Hey, I've been running these for years. Yeah. I know what's up.
Yeah.
So then how'd that go?
Well, that's what I thought. So
did they want you to turnkey the machine too?
Oh yeah. And I did. And so through that process, I turnkeyed the machine. I tooled it up. We got it set up. I got them trained.
And wait a second, back up. Did they have any Hydromats yet?
No, all they had was Acme griddles.
Oh, okay. So
yeah, they were wanting to put this part.
Those are always the people you're scared to sell machines to.
yeah. So those guys. What I learned I learned how to really translate Acmes into Hydromats for people. You know what I mean? And correlate concepts on both machines, which really helps us today because. A lot of our work comes from taking out old Acmes and putting it in Hydromat. So, so anyway, so I set the part up, run it, everything's good. But it took me, I lived in South Dakota for 2 months, you know what I mean? And so it was interesting. So, but it was a lot harder.
I hope they paid you enough that you could survive.
Well, here's the deal.
South Dakota is probably less expensive.
I remember I charged $65 an hour, and I thought that was the most money that I was just like, this is awesome, so yeah, it was fine. I was single. You know what I mean? It was fine. I was young. It was good. But no, anyway, but what I learned this is what I learned. And then I started to get more customers,
and did the machine turned out okay?
Yeah, it ran. It's still running. So it's all good.
That's awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
So then what did you learn? I'll stop interrupting you.
Oh, no, you're fine. So what I learned is when you're in your shop and all you've dealt with is the stuff that you've dealt with, you might have a good level of expertise there, but there is so much. I mean, that's like 10% of the world. And so like, I really wasn't an expert, you know what I mean? Like and I didn't try to like misrepresent the fact that I really thought I was,
because you knew about typical automotive parts,
right?
Right. But
and in this business and in this industry, in this niche, this Hydromat, Hydromat has done a great job at setting customers' expectations of the service and things that they're going to get. So if you don't meet that, like, we have to be better than the OEM to get work, you know what I mean, or have some advantage to it, right? So it took me a while to get up on plane and really get the knowledge gap and the experience. But what has happened is, since I've been in hundreds of places now, I have seen and experienced, and we've done a lot of jobs, and so your experience grows and you become an expert.
I mean, forgive me if I'm wrong, but it seems like, I guess it's like all machining, but there's so many, to use a trite cliche, there's lots of ways to skin a cat.
Yeah.
There's so many ways to approach a part. And some ways are stupider than others.
Yeah.
And particularly when you're dealing with a 12 or 16 station machine with a gazillion different attachments you can put on. So I'm sure you've seen some crazy stuff and probably learned some crazy stuff. And then later you went, oh my God, what the hell was I doing with that?
Right. Like, every year I look back and went, man, I learned a lot this year, So what happened, I did that business. It was called Legacy Machine Works. I had that business up until 2016. And then my partners, Mike Plenzik and Chad Derbyshire, worked at another company that did.
So you guys was it similar to what you do now? You were rebuilding, you were supplying units.
Yeah. But it was kind of like a 2-3 guy band, it wasn't anything, I was doing a lot of the stuff and using people that I knew. And, it was like it was hard to grow. You know what I mean? It was good. I made good money and everything was fine, but it was tough because I would like work on the machines and I'd package stuff up and then we'd take it to UPS. I was, all that stuff. And so it's hard to really grow the business and get sales and go out and do things. I got a lot of sales by word of mouth. First machine rebuild I ever got, I put parts for sale out on eBay and put my ad for Hydromat rebuilds on eBay. And then someone saw that and gave me a call and gave me a shot. So, it just works out like that. And anyway, so we did a good job. I built a decent customer base. And my soon-to-be partners, they worked at my competitor, and they called me up.
Said, Component Bar?
No, it was Ultratech up in Cleveland.
Okay.
And so they were looking to start a thing, and so we decided it would be best to just pull together our resources and start Revolution Machine Works. And so we had to wait out. A couple guys had to wait a year, for non-competes and things like that. But yeah, so that was a big challenge, which wasn't a big deal really, because I've been doing the stuff myself anyway, but it was still, we had to work through it.
And more or less now, if you want to buy a used turnkeyed Hydromat, I mean, it's more or less you guys. Hydromat does used. Sort of there's a few other guys out there, one-man bands,
Yeah, that's what I was back
that
before
know their
Revolution.
stuff. But
Yeah.
basically, if you want, you know, if you want a Hydromat that's, you know, you guys do the works, right? You'll put like PLC on there and
Oh yeah.
you know,
Yeah, we
replace
stripped the
everything.
machines all the way down to the casting, and we rebuilt them up to OEM spec, and we put all new electric, all new hydraulics, all new PLCs. We have our own CNC servo units that we use from DM2. So we have our own platforms to tool your machine up and turnkey it any way you need it turnkey.
Fanic control.
Fanic control. Yeah, Fanic 30i controls. Which is great because they don't go obsolete. So it's a good selling point for our customers.
Give me the range. All right, I'll try to get more specific. Okay, somebody comes with needs a 16 station, you know, full needs all the stations tooled up, wants it gone through everything, units, you know, totally gone through. I don't know, what are we talking? Say first, just no CNC on it, but just the PLC and rebuild. Let me guess. Like
Okay.
600 grand.
Yeah, if we're providing the machine and all the equipment, they're going to be 500 to 600,000 or something like that.
Okay.
If they are providing the machine, you're looking in the 250 to 350 range for just the rebuild, just completely giving them the machine back. Rebuild.
And what depending on what model do you prefer? Like Graf Pinkert all day. We would not rebuild somebody else's machine.
Okay.
It's just not, it doesn't really make sense to us the way we've always been. What would make sense business wise to you guys? Or it could be a good deal if they made it interesting enough.
Well, our favorite, we all the models we will work on any model of Hydromat, and but if I were to, that's a hard question to ask. It just depends what their parts like. You know what I mean? That pretty much dictates the configuration and what model you use, and that's based typically on diameter and how many stations you need. So what is the complexity and the size of the part? But if you were asking me what's my favorite Hydromat, I'd say it's the HB 4512 is my favorite Hydromat. Okay. And the reason is because you have bigger capacity all the way through the collet, so you can run 45 millimeters deep into the collet, whereas a 16 station you can only run 45 millimeters. You know, that far. You know, there's a certain distance, but it's
so
not.
There's more stroke on a 12.
Well, no, just like your ability to hold the part, like you can hold bigger parts, and
okay.
when you're working on it, there's more space within the machine. So me personally, that's why I like it better. So when you're doing different, putting in cross drills or putting in verticals or doing CNCs, you have more space in between the stations. Now, the 16 station is great because you have 4 more stations, just like a 6 versus 8 spindle screw machine.
Right.
You know what I mean? So. But it's cramped a little bit compared to the 4512. Now, the 2512 is great if you have 1 inch part or below because it's very fast. The indexing is a half second, whereas the bigger machines are 0.8 seconds. So you don't lose that much really, but you do over time, millions of pieces. It matters, and so I like them. I like all the machines for different reasons, but my favorite's the 4512 just because it's more space for me to get in and work on.
That's interesting. So you were saying that as far as selling, actually your preference is to sell the spare parts and the service as opposed to doing the full rebuilds. In a way, that's an easier business, correct? I know they go hand in hand, like you kind of need one for the other.
So our business is a service-based business, and what I mean by that is we we are very service intensive. We like to build, and I know everybody says this, but we are very relationship based with the customer. That means like when your lead man's there, we're going to send our service guy in, and not only is he going to fix your machine, but he's going to give your guy his phone number. He's going to give him his text and say, you have any problems other than this, just at all, anytime, call me, text me. And believe me, they do. And we don't charge for that. Like, so we get our sales because we help people. We fix their problems, and literally everything stems off of that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I prefer to sell it all, but what's easier for us is the service and the parts are good business because the parts are transactional, and the service is a great relationship that we're building, and we get to help people. And there's no better sales tool than a guy coming in and fixing your machine. It's like, well, they know what they're doing. They just fixed my machine that I couldn't fix. So, a sales guy can sit there and talk all day about how great they are. When you send a guy in and he shows you that they're great, it sells. And for us, we don't try to upsell or do any of that stuff. We go in and try to fix your problem. And if you want to buy from us, we want to sell to you. We want to help you. You know what I mean? And if you want to go somewhere else, fine. That's what we're here for, is the choice. We want to provide a choice for you. You know what I mean? So
see, to me, it seems like the service business, I mean, I think both of what you're doing is really hard.
Yeah.
But service, that's sort of an ongoing thing that people need. Hydromats, Hydromats for us used to be, I always say we're in the treasure hunting business.
Yeah. You guys are, really.
Hydromats were a prime treasure. I mean, we'd go everywhere. Italy, Norway, freaking, yeah, man, that was fun. Bought these 2512s in Norway.
That's cool.
Had to wait a year for them to finally go down in price enough to buy them. And then sold them to a rebuilder.
That's cool.
But my point is, I'll get to the point. The point is that even when you get a good buy on a used Hydromat, it takes 10 prospects to sell one Hydromat. I don't know what it is, but
it's expensive is what
people
it is.
who buy Hydromats, even if it's a good deal, people who buy Hydromats, they're very, I don't know what it is. They're indecisive. Maybe it's because it's a big investment. Maybe they're overwhelmed by, do I really need it for this job? I don't know. But
I mean, it's a big investment.
Seem like the hardest. They're the hardest machines to sell.
They are hard to sell. It's a big investment with all across an organization. It's not only financial, but technical wise. You got to have somebody dedicated to learning that machine and being able to learn the machine. Space wise, I mean, you can fit, a lot of a couple CNCs in the space of a Hydromat. Sometimes you're space limited. And then you have the financial side, and then there's just such a sea of unknown, so it's like, that's why companies,
you have a much better chance of selling a Hydromat to somebody that already has 20 of them. They got 1 million units on the shelf. They got, they're confident. And where I'm sure you're selling to plenty of those kind of people too, but you're trying to get the people who it's their first one, the Hydromat virgins.
And that's
virgins, really, it's tough.
That's our deal.
It's a tough nut to crack.
We always talk. We pick the hardest way to make money for sure. So I look around and think
it's so much respect for that. My God,
I'm like, what are we doing some days, but it's rewarding when it works. And when you see people order a second machine, you're like, man, we just changed everything there. And it's awesome. Good. And those customers who let us introduce them to Hydromats, we do really well with, because we all used to work at shops. A lot of us used to work at Hydromat, and we all used to work at shops. We know what it's like.
That's so important.
We know what they want. So we got both sides of the spectrum on experience, Well,
there's nothing better than being able, if you're trying to sell to somebody, to be able to put yourself in their shoes.
Yep.
I mean, my problem is that I feel like there's a tribe of people who have run production, and
Yeah.
I'm around the tribe plenty, and I'm even sort of, I'm like the town crier in the tribe, the podcast, and like people pay attention to what we do.
Yep.
But I'm always going to be an outsider. I'm always not going to be quite part of that club. And there's something really special about somebody like you. You can, like, somebody can come to you and they can talk about something they're going through, and you can genuinely go, yeah, I know. I mean, I've had the automotive company have me by the balls. Like,
yeah, totally.
I know what's up.
Yeah.
So,
and you're right. And here's the thing.
It's a great thing that you're able to do.
I think it really helps me out. And I think, one of the things that always resonates with me is when our family bought our first new Hydromat. I mean, that was the most money we had ever spent on anything.
So
I mean,
how much
it was
did that cost?
$1.4 million and $1.3 million or something.
And now if you bought a new CNC Hydromat, you're talking 2.5.
Yeah, 2 million. And so for my family and our family business, this was a huge deal. Like, this was the deal, and I take that lens when I'm dealing with any of our customers, is that this is maybe the most money they're ever going to spend on it. So it's got to be awesome, and it's got to be right, and we got to treat them right. We got to see it to the end, and we got to make it happen. Because there is no alternative for those companies, for almost anybody when you spend that much money. But I'm saying especially the job shops, the family-owned places. You got to get it right.
You better not mess it up. No,
there's a lot on the line for everyone. So,
this is a great interview. A couple more questions. So, just stuff I like to ask people. What did you learn in the last week?
That's a good one.
Just one interesting thing. It doesn't have to be about the Hydromat business. Could be, a book you read, or a sports score, or something.
Well, it's kind of dumb, but I'm a Bengals fan, and I learned that the Bengals can win and can go to the playoffs. So that happened last week. That was good. I don't know.
Congratulations.
I learn things every single day. It's hard to just pick one thing, but man, that's a tough one. That's a good question. I don't know.
I always write that down every day. I write down at least one thing I learned.
Okay. Yeah. I should start doing that. Apparently I'm not learning
anything. It's interesting how many people I ask that question to, and a good portion of them are just like, shit, I don't know what I learned.
I don't know.
And I know they have, but
let me tell you what I learned. This is a very important thing that I learned at the end of this year. I learned that for me, I need to, when I take vacation, I need to actually take vacation instead of halfway being on vacation and answering emails and checking things and halfway not.
That is such an important thing to learn.
Yeah. And the reason I learned that, I was pretty burnt out. We had a lot of growth, just a lot of action last year. And I was pretty burnt out at the end of the year, and I took 2 weeks off completely. And I was very grateful that everyone at our company allowed, me to do that, basically, and, handled all the business. And, I've come back with such a renewed focus and feel so much better, and I just think that that's important. And that's something that's definitely going to be a part of what I do. I feel guilty, you leave and you feel guilty because you have things going on. Yeah, but it's just part of the you got to get out of that, so
there's a podcast.
That's what I learned.
There's a podcast that we did. It's with a guy named Ari Meisel, he's like a productivity expert.
Nice.
And his thing is, you have to be able to replace yourself if you can't replace yourself, you don't own a business. You own a job.
Yeah, that makes sense. Makes perfect sense.
So
And
so that really says something. If you were able to take 2 weeks off and not need to worry, and you being the president of the business, I think you should feel like that's quite an achievement.
It's awesome. It's awesome. And that goes along the same lines, like when I was by myself, with my previous company, I always thought that, if I'm gone, the company's gone, but this company's not like that. You know what I mean? And that's when, you've really started to build something.
For sure.
You know what I mean? So
one other question. When you think of happiness, what do you think of?
I mean, when I think of happiness, to be honest, I think I see my end goal in mind, which is to be the most premier rotary transfer machine provider in North America. And I see customers happy, and I see our people happy, and I see the goal achieved. That's what I think about.
So
is how it looks in the end.
Well, it sounds like you're saying two different things, but it sounded like what you said in the end was making other people happy.
Yeah, basically
and satisfied is what makes you happy.
Absolutely. And
that's awesome.
That's part of the stress is if people aren't happy or things are not going as well, that wears on, you know what I mean? So that's what makes me happy, is when we say we're going to do something and other people are happy that we did it. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you it's such a great interview.
No, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's great.
Long time
respect
coming.
This podcast. Yeah. And like what you guys do, and nobody covers the industry like you guys do. So appreciate that.